Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Bing Ouyang. I'm a material scientist working in the field of computational material science. And I'm currently a postdoc working with Professor Gerben Cedar at the University of California, Berkeley. So this is my channel for sharing my understanding of material science, including sharing my opinions and understanding about some recent papers and some mini tutorial about material science, as well as my daily life as a material scientist. So today I'd like to continue my series of videos that introducing Python or like the elementary information of Python to material scientists. So if you have watched my last video, I have break down a complicated Python code into different pieces to help you understanding how Python operates. So you may look at a very complicated Python code and kind of get lost in the very beginning as a beginner, right? But you can basically break down them into some elemental pieces, which can be either like a data or like an operator. So the data includes something like a number, like a string, or some data structures like list, tuple, dictionary, set, etc. And an operator is basically how you operate this data, right? So it's including like basic operators like the mathematical operators or some specific things that you want to do, for instance, to change the value of the data. So that are the basic two elements of a Python command. And then the next thing you want to do is actually to blend this Python command into, like a real command, right? The command you already have both the data and the operator. So such as print a string, which is called I'm happy working with for working from home, and all like like a equals a numpy array 1 2 3 4. This is basically assign a value to a numpy array. And then you can write the different commands. So, and the next thing you want to do is actually to integrate them a little bit by putting the commands into a box. So we have three typical boxes in Python, which are either functions and modules and classes. So the boxes are basically a container of a lot of data and operators. So those boxes are always defined with a specific like usage to help you define, to help you to do a list or like a sequences of operations. So those are the basic elements. So at the beginning of Python, what you want to do is actually following these three stages. Like the first stage is that you want to practice and get familiar with Python, right? So today I would like to show you how to use Jupyter Notebook and how to try to practice and type in some simple command using Python. And then when you have some basic knowledge about Python, the next thing you want to do is to try to group up different codes together into, like a function, a module, or like a class. And after that, assuming that you have studied Python for, like 3 months, and then you now have already written like 10,000 of lines of Python, even though some of them are like kind of duplicated. And the next thing you want to do is actually to figure out what are the commands that you use the most often, and to try to pack them up into a module. And those modules can further accumulate into like your own gears for specific operations. For instance, you are processing like a voltage curve as a battery scientist every day, and then you can develop a function that helps you to automate the processing of the voltage curve. And you can further build it up so that you have a package which can help you deal with every single electrochemical data when you are doing a battery design. So that is actually the vision that I want to share with you when you start to learn Python. All right, so today I'd like to demonstrate two types of script and give some examples of how to learn Python and how to write some Python command to help you accelerate your life. Like as I mentioned, like Python is not only useful for theorists, it's remarkably useful and helpful for experimentalists as well. Like because we have to dealing with a large amount of data nowadays. So learning a script, especially like a convenient script like Python, can really help you facilitate your daily research routines. Okay, let's get started for some real Python commands. So today I'd like to give my demonstration using Jupyter Notebook. So Jupyter Notebook can always be opened using like using the Python using the browser. So what you need to do is actually to open the Jupyter Notebook, and then you can type all of your commands and press enter to run those commands. So let me first restart and clear the output of my Jupyter Notebook, and then give you some demonstrations of how to use Python. All right, so the first part of this notebook is usually some kind of a comment explaining what happens in this notebook. And then I have different pieces on this notebook, which is explaining some elementary information of Python. For instance, like the first one is some basic data structure of Python. So data structure is basically the name or the type of a specific data, as I just mentioned. Like in Python, if you have no idea of Python, then you only need to know three basic type of data structures, which are either list, dictionary, and Numpy arrays. So list is the simplest one because it is simply a list of numbers or a list of some other basic elements like numbers, the characters, the strings, and it can be a list of lists, and also can be a list of any other classes. So when you want to give a value to a list, you can simply type two brackets with the value of in a certain order that you want. And then, for instance, if I want to have a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, you can basically assign the value 1, 2, 3, 4 with a bracket to a list called mylist. And then you can print out the values of mylist. And as I just mentioned, in Python, everything can be broken into either data or operation, right? So the data of a list is basically 1, 2, 3, 4. And you also have the operations of the list, which is, like you can check the type of the list. It's a class called list. And also you can check, what is the length of the list, how many numbers I have, how many members I have in the list. You can use the length of the list, and they have 4 members. And the next thing you want to do is to do, sometimes I want to slice the numbers. I only want to take the first 3 of the list. Then you can use the slice by, like typing print my list with a bracket and the first 3 numbers up to 3. So in that case, you can extract the first 3 number of a list, which we call slicing. And as I just mentioned, the member of a list can be anything. It can even be another list. So here I create a list, which is a list of lists. So the first member of this list is a list which has 4 numbers, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, the second one is 5, 6, 7, 8. So then I create a list of lists. Well, the length of the list is 2. And each of the member is a list which have a length of 4. So that is some examples of the user list. So, but as you also realize, the usage of a list is kind of limited, right? So assuming that I have, data from different materials. I have materials 1, materials 2, materials 3. Each of the material have a name. And one day I just want to check the data of a specific name. For instance, I want to check the capacity of a material. By using list, this is not so convenient, right? Because list cannot allow you to define a name for a specific value in a certain position. But dictionary can do that. Dictionary works just like a dictionary. You just need a name as an index so you can find the value of the name by searching on the dictionary. So in Python, you can define a dictionary with the name of each values and the value followed by each of the name. So the name is called key in dictionary, but the value is called value in dictionary. So in that case, if you want to print the dictionary, they're gonna give you every information about dictionary, like the material name and the capacity that is defined. And sometimes if you want only check a certain value with a certain name, then you can type capacity dictionary with a bracket and the key name, which, for instance, like material 1, then you're gonna get the name of material 1, which is 300. So, of course, they also have operations. In dictionary, you have some special operations, such as if you only want to know the names in the dictionary, you can use capacity dictionary.keys. Then it's gonna give you all the names of the dictionary. And on the other hand, I may only be interested in the values of the dictionary, right? So it's basically use the dictionary as a list. So in that case, you can just use .values. And then it's gonna give you the values of the list. And in some other conditions, you want both. So in that case, you can use capacity dictionary.items. And in that case, it's gonna dump out, like the key and the value of each of the dictionary. So in that case, you can sort of keep track of each of the members and each of the value of the member. So that is the basic usage of a dictionary. So the next data structure that may be remarkably helpful is basically the Numpy arrays. Like I just introduced the list, right? The list works almost like a vector, but it does not have all the function of a vector. For instance, as a like an engineer, we do a lot of matrix operations, right? Sometimes I want to like multiply a vector with another vector or like a matrix. I want to do some matrix operations such as to take an inverse of the matrix or the determinant of a matrix. So in that case, the list cannot do any of them. The Numpy arrays actually are designed to do this numeric operation. That is why it's called Numpy. It's basically an abbreviation of numeric Python. So by default, the Numpy is almost like a list. So what you need to do is actually to type numpy.array. So in that case, you can create a list, but now you have the data structure of Numpy array. And you can also create a vector or like a numeric array with some specific rules. For instance, here, I want to evenly separate and extract the numbers every with a step of 8 in the range of 8 to 64. So in that case, I can use line space. It's basically like a linear spacing of a specific numeric range. And also, if you want to create a range of numbers with a certain step set, you can also use the numpy.arange. And also, if you want to stack the 3 Numpy arrays, you can use numpy.stack, and then you get a matrix. So if you run this command, you're gonna see what happens. Like the first one gives you a Numpy array, the second one gives you a Numpy array with a step of 8, well, the third one will give you the array with a step of 100. And the last one is combining these 3 Numpy arrays into a matrix. So this is what exactly happened in the Numpy. And if you combine a Numpy array with a list, you're gonna see that only differences is that they don't have the small comma in between each of the member, because it basically works like a vector. So, and another thing is like you can transfer always from the Numpy array to a list. Like just use the operation which is called a toList. So if you use the toList operations without putting any parameters, they're gonna return you a list which is transferred from the Numpy array. Now you can see that the comma is getting back. Alright, so let me show you the sweetest thing of Numpy array is that you can do numeric operations such as the matrix operations. So I first give example if you want to, for instance, add up the values of 2 vectors into a new vector, right? So this is the basic thing that you want to do. By using a list, I have list 1, list 2, which has the same members of values, right? And if I just use list 1 plus list 2, and let me comment the rest of it, in that case, they're gonna only append the second list on top of the first list, because the list does not have the operation of sum up. And if you're using the operator sum, they're gonna only append the two lists. And on the other hand, if you run this command, list 1 minus list 2, it's gonna give you an error message because list does not have these minus operations. So in that case, if you want to do that using Python or Numpy arrays, then you're gonna see that, like I can do this plus and the minus very straightforward. And then I can do things like a transport. I can do a square of a Numpy array, and I can do basically a global like division of two Numpy arrays. So in that case, they're gonna give you, like the first one gives you a new list, and the second one also a new list. The third one is basically a transport of this list that I showed you, and then you take a square root of the list, and you did a matrix division of these two lists, which is array 4 divided array 1. It's basically a matrix divided by a vector, right? So that is what all you can do using Numpy arrays. So if you want to know more about it, feel free to Google that or leave me a message if you have any questions on this demonstration. So let me move to the second part. The second part is something more complicated. Now we know all the basic operations, but sometimes I want to kind of group them up, right? So in that case, you have all kinds of boxes. And as I mentioned, all the boxes are basically 3 types. The first one is a function. The second one is a module. And the third one is a class. A function is the simplest version of box that you can have. Because a function, you just need to start with def, which is abbreviation for definition. And then you just give a name of the function with a parameter list, and that containing the parameters of the functions inside is like dictionary /in. And this is basically the input parameters of the function. And then sometimes you want to return something. So in a function, you always have this return, but sometimes if you don't want to return anything, then you can skip the return command. And what is inside a function is basically a collection of a Python command. For instance, I define a function that can keep track of the basic information of a dictionary, such as print and the value of the dictionary, the keys of the dictionary, and the values are only the values are inside the dictionary, and also all the key value pair of the dictionary. And then I kind of sum up all the values in the dictionary, and then I return all the keys. So by defining this, then next time you don't have to type, like this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 command lines. So next time, what you need to do is just to call this function, which is called a dictionary info. So now here I make a typo because the function name is dictionary underline info. So here I define a dictionary, and then I call this function to ask him to return, like all the informations, and also return the length of the dictionary keys. So if you run this command, so I make a typo, I should run this first, and then the function is defined, and then I rerun it. They're gonna do the operations one by one. So this is how box helps, right? So you just need to define all the operations in a function, and the next time you don't have to redo all those commands. You just need to call this function and give them the value. They're gonna process the value automatically. So this is the basic type of container or the box, as I mentioned, in Python. And things can sometimes get a little bit more complicated. Like I want to get the information, for instance, like 100 data, and also I have different operations, which it's not so straightforward to define that into a single function. So I want to separate them into different functions, right? So in that case, you can basically define a module. A module is basically a box that you can put anything into it. It's a Python script. And each time if you want to extract either like a data or like operation from a module, you just need to use the command from the module name, import the member or the content of the module. For instance, here I give example of a very useful module which is called SciPy. It's a Python library that for numeric operations, even including some basic machine learning gears. So here, the SciPy have, like the physics constant that we used, which are basically some data, right? So I don't want to give them, I don't want to Google what is Boltzmann, like a constant, what is the mass of electron, what is the charge of a single electron. So sometimes I just don't remember it, and I don't want to give them a value. I just want to be lazy here. So in that case, what you can do is to use SciPy the constant, and then import k, which is the Boltzmann constant. E is basically the charge of an electron, speed of light, and also the Avogadro constant. So in that case, then you have already the value of the data which is stored in SciPy the constant, and you can just print them out, like Boltzmann constant and electron charge, both, and also the speed of light. And here, if you divide both the Boltzmann constant with the electron charge, you basically have another value which is electronic volt per Kelvin, right? So in that case, you can end up with this is the most typically used Boltzmann constant, which is 8.61 times 10 to the minus 5 electronic volt per Kelvin. So if you are doing DFT calculations, this is actually very frequently used. So that is how you can import data from the module. At the same time, you can also import some functions of a module, right? So in a module, you have, for instance, like an image. It's actually a class. I'm going to introduce a class later. And also image filter, which is actually, another module, another class in the module. And also there's a function which is called a plot. And in Numpy, there's a function which is called as area. So basically, I'm calling different operations from 3 modules. The first one is PIL, which is pillow. So it's basically a library which can help you processing images. And then I also need Numpy, so I need to call Numpy. I also need to plot something, so here I call the matplotlib. It's the library for plotting and visualization data. So, and then I create a figure, and I open the cat image, which is the image of my 2 cats, and then I assign them as a value and then plot it out. So if you run it, they're going to show you the picture of my 2 lovely cats. So that is actually how you use different modules. So now you only use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 command lines plus 4 lines of calling the specific modules, right? But you're actually doing a lot here. So here what you do is actually you open the image file and you read all the data in the image file and you transfer that into a Numpy area, and then you use the plotting function to visualize this image in your browser. That is actually a lot of operations. But by using the function, the people developing these modules have already implemented all the functions and written up all the commands that you want to do. And as a user, you just need to know how to use this already existed modules and operations. All right, so I'm going to do a very quick demo for the later functions, because I'm not going to give you a tutorial about pillow, but some basic things you can do is like what you frequently do by doing PS, right? You can use Python to do a Photoshop using like 5 command lines. For instance, if I want to change the picture into, binary colors, so we have these monochrome functions, which is to make, to give the monochrome flavor to your pictures. And then you can run this. Again, I use this command to convert my image into monochrome. And then I do sort of the similar sense by making them an area, create a figure, and show this figure, and switch off all the axes. And then if I run it, I kind of Photoshop a little bit of my pictures. So this is a example which gives you a little bit flavor how things can be easily done if you know how to use different boxes or if you have well-defined boxes. All right, so, and the third one is like I define my own module and put all the informations into my own module, and I define a function which is called my dictionary information, which does pretty much the same thing as what I did here. Well, it's actually here, what I did here. So what you need to do is actually to create a Python script and put this function copy paste into that script and then save it. And the next time you can directly import the script or the function of the script and use it directly without defining it again. So next time I will give you some more details how to use that in a PC or in a platform. So don't worry about that if you are still confusing how to like make it happen. But also, if you cannot wait for like a few days, you can also Google. You can find that immediately if you try to type, how to call a specific module in Python. You just need to add the Python path in your environment. All right. So the last basic thing is a class. So I sort of imagine class as, like a robot, because in a robot, it can do everything automatically, and it's a sort of complicated, right? Because it has, like different functions, and you have different data. And in a class, you actually have different types of functions, which I can give you a more detailed explanation in the future classes. But now let me just briefly go through it. So in the class, we usually have an initialization function, which is called underline init underline. So this is how you initiate a robot. And then it has all the functions such as introduce myself, parse dictionary informations, which is basically a copy of the functions here. So now you see that our class can be a collection of both operations and data. And then it also has the attribute, which is the data of the robot. It's the name and the group. So if you run this class, they're going to define the robot. And now you can, use this class to create object. An object is a real robot that can do a specific type of job for you. For instance, I create a robot 1, which is called Jim Green from Cedar Group, and robot 2, which is called Optimus from Cedar Group. And then if you print robot1.name, they're going to give you Jim Green. Robot2.name going to give you Optimus. And also you can ask robot2 to introduce yourself. They will say, hello, I'm your robot. My name is Optimus. I am from Cedar Group. And also you can ask him to parse the dictionary information by typing robot2 dot parse dictionary information. They're going to parse the dictionary information for you. And the new dict is actually defined in the previous command. Let me search for it. Yeah, it's here. So this is the definition of the new dictionary. So they're going to pass the information of the new dictionary here. All right, that is pretty much, I would say, like, if you already know, like, everything I'm doing here, so you are like 95% packed up for Python, like you're almost ready for write a Python script. And the next thing you want to do is that basically to make your coding more efficient and write a better quality of the code. But even if you don't have those advanced skills of writing Python, you are already prepared to create some useful script to automate your data processing or to accelerate your research life. Now let me give you very brief examples to using that to do something more practical. Is to process a voltage curve. So let me clean it up. So as a battery scientist, the basic thing we do is to create a battery and cycle it, right? So if you are doing a cathode. So here I give an example. It's actually from my colleague. It's a PhD student called Jinyang Wang. It's from Cedar Group. He's an expert doing sodium batteries. Last time I showed you a Nature Materials paper about synthesis science, and he's actually the first author of that paper. And Jinyang has made some very exciting nautical materials, and he has published these materials in Advanced Energy Materials. And I sort of borrowed the electrochemical data to demonstrate, like I have a data with 10 cycles of a voltage curve. The original file is actually a mess. Now let me show you the original files quickly. All right, yeah. So this is the original data that Jinyang gave me. It's an Excel file which can be dumped out from the software that doing your battery test is basically the channel information. So you have 4 sheets in the file. Like each of them have a mass of data, right? So those are the basic elementary. These are elementary information of the data, and this compound is manganese chromium, which is published in this year in Advanced Energy Materials. You can go to Cedar Group website to check in more information about it. And then we have this channel name. In each of the channel, we have a lot of data, right? So I remember Jinyang cycled this for like, let me go to the very end. It's like 23 cycles. So if you have no idea of how to, like use Python, what you need to do is actually basically, like go to each of the line, select the column, but you cannot select the whole column, right? Because it's 23 cycles. So you have to stop. This is the cycle index 1, so you have to move down, and move down. Yeah, it's here. All right, let me stop here. Yeah. So you have to stop here and copy paste that into a plotting software. You can use Excel, or some people are using Origin. So you have to kind of copy paste and copy paste. So assuming that you have 300 cycles, you are doing a retention test. It's gonna take you like at least a few hours, right? So this is so boring. It has no techniques. If you're a PhD student, you don't want to do that all day. So by using Python, you can do that very convenient. Like here I have charge, I have discharge, I have to plot something like this. So this is not really something that is present. But by using Python, you just need to close this file. You don't need to look at it. And I don't want to. No. All right, let me go back to my script. The only thing I need to do is actually to read this Excel file, which is called nazicondata.xlsx. So Python already has this kind of a module, which is called Pandas. So Pandas is a module that have all the information to do complicated type of, especially those table style or Excel styles of structures or data structures. So you just need to use Pandas, and then I also need Matplotlib to plot the data, and I also need Numpy area that I mentioned is very useful for doing these vector operations. And then the first thing I need to do is to read the Excel file, right? You just need to use panda.excel file with the name, and then I just want to know the information of the channel 1. With index of 22. So in that case, I can give the number of div underline channel underline 1. And then I want to obtain some global information of the Excel file, which is actually, like, is basically this one. So I want to know all the information in this sheet. So in that case, I can read parse with the sheet name, and it's gonna give you global information. And also, if you want to know the sheet with the name of channels underline 1/022, they will also give you to this value. And then I want to type to have a quick view of what I have. So I run this command. It's gonna take some time because it's a large file, but it's just gonna be a few seconds. And now the data type of df underline channel underline 1 is a Pandas structure, which is called the data frame. All right, so let me try to print what I have. Now I have already read all the information into my memory, and now let me print. I'm printing the columns of this sheet with the name channel underline 1 / 021. So I want to know the head strings. It's basically the name of the head. What I'm printing here is actually the title of each columns in the sheet. So now I have the information of what exactly are the data I have, right? So the next thing I want to do is because I want to plot the voltage curve. So what I care about is basically the cycle index, right? Which tell me which cycle is that. And I want to know the voltage, I want to know the charge capacity and the discharge capacity. And the rest of them I don't really care for now, right? So I can just leave them alone. So then I also want to know some basic informations, which including, let me print it out, is the, the data is from the channel 1 / 022, the starting time of the experiment, which is 2019, the scheduled file name, the owner of the data, which is Jinyang, and the comment, which is, I suppose this is the mass of the value and the rate, which is a C/10, and this is a mass. All right. And also we have some other informations like the size of the cycle indexes have like 33,000 data. And also I kind of store them into a Pandas series, and we have 23 cycles. We have the voltage size and etc. and the voltage window. Those are all the information that I read from this big table. And all you want need to do is actually to learn how to use a data frame in the Pandas. So I may give you some more detailed demonstration about how to use Pandas, but just feel free to leave a message so I know that in the next session or in the next video, I'm gonna walk you through how to use Pandas and the Panda data frame to dealing with complicated files like Excel. All right, so let me go through this script since we have already do this for like 37 minutes. All right, so the main part is actually to block the voltage curve into different cycles, right? So now you only need 10 lines. You need a loop to enumerate all the cycles, and you have the cycle information already read from the basic information of the data frame. And then you kind of cut the data frame. It's basically what you do by hand, by cutting each of the data frame, depending on the index. So in each of the loop, you are basically checking, the cycle number of it. So if it goes to a new cycle number, or if the member have already exceeded each of the point, because in each of the cycle you have a data point number, right? So you can use this to check if you are in a certain cycle or not. So in that case, then you can read 23 members in a list. So this is basically a list of lists, because in each of the lists, so let me show, it has 23 lists in the list, which is called the charge underline capacity underline list. So if you print the length of charge capacity list, the first member of it, they have 732, which means the first list, which is the first charge capacity, have 732 data points. And then you can plot it up by using Matplotlib. So in that case, I want to plot all the voltage curve. And if it's a mass, usually I only show the first, the fifth, the 10, and the 20th of the voltage curve. So let me run it. they're gonna process the data and plot out the voltage curve, which is 23 cycles. And then you also want to plot only the 4 cycles to see the retention performance of the data, right? Because this is kind of a mess. So also, the next thing we typically want to do is to see the dQ/dV. It's basically the first derivation of the charge capacity in the voltage. So in that case, you can use numpy.difference to calculate the numeric differential of numpy area and then print it out. So if I run it, then I have the dQ/dV, and this peak shows the plateau in the voltage curve, right? So if you are a battery scientist, you're gonna know what does each of the peak mean. It's basically a two-phase region in a charge and discharge profile. All right, that's pretty much what you need to do. Like, assuming you have like 1,000 voltage curve, by running this script, it's gonna take you maybe like 5 minutes for you to visualize all the voltage curve and save that into a figure. So if you see here, now I have the figures which can be put into a slides or into a paper or any other documents. That's the cyclic performance of the battery that you made, which is extracted automatically from this Excel file. All right, that is pretty much what I want to show today. It's some elementary information to help you to get started using Python. And what is coming next is more about using Python to do computational material science. So I will first give you an introduction of the Python tools available for material scientists. Like if you are confused about what is SciPy and what is, like Pandas and what is Numpy, I will walk you through of those basic Python tools and, like how to get familiar with them and what those tools can do. And also, I will give you an example in the future of how to use Python to do a high throughput computation. That is basically automated DFT calculations. All right, so I will post those videos in a few weeks, and please feel free to let me know and leave me a message like what exactly you want to learn from Python. So as long as that is within the scope of computational material science, I'm very happy to provide new videos on top of that. And that is pretty much about my video today for the Python primer. And I hope this is helpful for your daily research, regardless if you are an experimentalist or a theorist. And thank you again for looking at my video, and please feel free to like it or forward it to your friends, and please subscribe my channel if you like anything that I provided here. All right, and that's pretty much for today. Hope all of you enjoy your weekends. I will see you next time.